Hello and welcome to Pensions in 10 with me, David Brooks, and my colleague Simon Kew. This week we look at the latest views on Section 37. We look at young people's pensions knowledge and when we're all going to retire.
Dave, the Section 37 Virgin Media case rumbles on, and someone else has issued some thoughts on this, the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales. What have they said?
Yeah, they've issued some guidance for accountants and auditors when dealing with this Section 37 Virgin Media case issue. As a quick reminder for those that aren't aware, this is the case where deeds executed between 1997 and 2016 could be invalid if not accompanied by actuarial confirmation or certificate or in writing somewhere that the scheme still meets the reference scheme test, would be invalid. So this has caused, obviously, lots of trustees that are listening to this will be aware of this case and probably discussed it around the trustee table. But what happens for the accountants and the auditors is they need to account for this in some way in the trustees report accounts. I said accounts way too many times in that sentence. Simon will be silently seething at me for not thinking of enough. I'll get my thesaurus out next time. Anyway, they have to work with trustees and set these things and do the audit. And it has caused a few areas of friction, I would say, between our legal chums, our actuarial chums and our auditor chums, when they're saying, look, you need to do something about this when we're auditing the accounts. And then the legal people will say, the lawyers will say, well, we're the lawyers here and we will decide whether we think it's relevant for the scheme to look into it. And the auditors may turn to the actuary and say, you need to quantify the impact of Section 37 on the scheme based on not very much. And it's quite interesting reading through the press statement that went with the guidance. And the ICAEW do kind of in real time go through all the different conversations that the trustees will have had with their advisors recently. You know, do nothing, do a little bit of something, do a whole hog review and into it, and the sort of the benefits and the pros and cons of doing those steps. My view, and we had Jade Murray of Adelshaw Goddard on a podcast a few months ago talking about this, and her view was quite strong, and it's a view that I'm very sympathetic with. That you know, at the end of the day, the trustees' lawyers should be in the best place to tell the scheme what to do. If there's no reason to think the deeds are not in order, then don't look. If you think your deeds are sometimes not executed properly or there's been issues in the past, then perhaps that's a reason to look. It's all about having a reason to look. If you're going through risk transfer, then that might be a reason just to understand the risk. Of course, and the article that we're sort of noting here in Pensions Age also notes that there are two further moving parts in this. There's another case that's apparently going to be heard this month, looking at some of the evidence requirements around Section 37, but also the DWP are also hoped or / expected to do something to help this situation. So fingers crossed that they come through with something that's pragmatic. And the other issue that brings up actually is if you do something, then until we know what the DWP's proposed solution is, you might have to do something again. So it probably, on balance, if you ask me, on balance, I think the wait and see approach is still probably the right one. Okay, Simon, I think you've been looking into some stats from the Money and Pension Service. They've been looking into the knowledge amongst young people for National Apprenticeship Week. So what have you found out?
It's quite interesting, Dave. Yes, they've been surveying younger people and apprentices. And their conclusion is businesses need to do more to help apprentices and younger employees understand pensions. I don't think that's going to be a surprise to our viewer, listener, or indeed to ourselves, Dave. No. It's interesting that the knowledge that young people profess to have on pensions is around 50% of young people saying they understood the basics of pensions well or fairly well. But the 4 questions that were asked, and they were asked in a true, false, unsure style, found only 1 in 10 younger people answered the 4 basic questions correctly, and a higher number, 13%, failed to correctly answer any of the 4 questions. So you and I, when we were planning this, immediately said, what are the 4 questions? And I found them. So question number 1, you'll only receive tax relief on the pension contributions that you make. True, false, unsure, not sure. They're all the same answer format, by the way, just to spoil it for our viewer and listener. Only your pension provider can choose how your pension contributions are invested. You cannot move a pension pot from one pension provider to another. You can start taking your money from your pension pot when you turn 55. Now, apart from being slightly irritated that they use pension pot, because I really hate that phrase, relatively basic questions. And for anyone that wants to know, it's true, false, false, true to those 4 questions. But it does highlight that we do need to help younger people. And this is something I said at a round table I was at a couple of weeks ago. If there were, let's say, like MAPS have done this survey, let's say MAPS created an e-learning that they could roll out to employers and say, do this when you're onboarding an apprentice or someone starting work with you, put it into your e-learning, and hopefully it will get people to engage at a much earlier age with their pension. We're going to touch on another story in a little while, which looks at the disparity between reality and what people would like with regards to retirement ages. To help people with planning their retirement, let's start the education process at a much earlier age. Dave, you've spotted this week's doom mongering in the press, haven't you? It effectively says that we're going to have to work until we fall off the twig, but it isn't quite as simple as that, is it?
No, and I shouldn't be laughing because, it's all very serious stuff. But the cheery folks at the International Longevity Centre have been thinking about state pension age. And obviously, one of the metrics when governments set state pension age might be how long you expect to live for and how long you expect that pension to be paid for. And they're suggesting that the state pension age should rise to 70 or 71 by 2050, which for those of us that wouldn't be at that age by then, that's a bit of a shocker and a bit of a shame. So they're coming at this from a perspective of maintaining a sort of a worker retiree ratio. They're suggesting that should be around 5 workers to every 1 retiree. And the concern is that by 2050, for a lot of countries, this ratio will be 1 worker for 1 retiree, and that doesn't feel sustainable. So if we think the sustainability of a state pension system, probably one of the primary things we'll be thinking of is the people that are actually paying your pension, because there isn't a pot of money. Simon, don't get triggered by the use of the word pot, but that there isn't a pot of money with your name on it. There is a cohort of workers paying tax and the national insurance to pay your pension when you get there, and so that ratio is integral. However, it is only one metric of many that the governments will be thinking about when setting state pension age. And one thing the ILC do discuss is healthy working life as well, because if you the further away state pension age gets, then the more likely you're going to have people of working age but unable to work through ill health or incapacity or whatever. So this is a big topic. We're going to be hearing a lot more about how the state pension age may rise in the future to ensure its sustainability, but also to ensure it meets the needs of wider society. You need to chuck in fertility rates into this, variations in healthy lifestyles. There was once some stats around I can't remember if it was last week or the week before, around the ONS projecting future life expectancy when people reach the current state pension age of 67 have actually decreased by a couple of years for men. Anyway, this number on top of my head, I think it was gone from about 21 years of healthy life after reaching 67 has gone down to 18. And so if that was a metric, then the state pension age probably should be going down, but it isn't. That's one thing we can be sure the state pension age isn't going to reduce ever. I would say ever, quite strongly. It's only going to go up. So when it goes up and how that fits in with the wider demographics and economics of society is a very, very tricky balancing act to take.
Well, dear viewer and listener, on that cheery note, it's time to draw this Pensions in 10 to a close for another week. Thanks so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, subscribe, listen on your favourite podcast provider when you're out walking the dog or having a jog or having a cup of tea in a cafe maybe. But thanks very much. Keep pensioning. There it is again, Dave. And we'll see you next week. Take care.